Today I am looking at a strategy released by TradePro. It was released some time ago and it's been on my list, but I've never reviewed it before, and I just got to looking at it recently. So this is a simple day trading strategy, as the title indicates. It uses the EMA, Heikin Ashi and the parabolic SAR. TradePro describes it in detail in this video, and in fact there are two follow-up videos. There is a video where he tests this 100 times and another where he tests it 200 times. I'm going to be writing code to create this strategy, and I'm going to compare that to his 100 trades test. I'm not trying to compare to both, I just want to see if we can get similar types of results. And so you'll see today the results of my test and the code for this strategy. So let's begin differently with this video. Instead of going straight into the code, I'm going to run the test first. So I've already written the code actually before I show you how to write it. The Heikin Ashi PSAR EMA. I'm testing on Euro USD because that's what was used in the video that I've taken the strategy from on the 5-minute chart. I'm running this for the year from 1st of January 24 to 1st of January 25, so a full year, using every tick based on real ticks, so that's as accurate as I can get with the data that I have at hand. Starting with a $10,000 balance with leverage of 1 to 100. So on that 12-month test, this does not appear to be a profitable strategy. This is certainly not what I was led to expect from the original video. In fact, apart from a couple of little spikes, it's almost a steady downward trend. So what I want to do now is make sure I've got the coding correct and then try to identify other reasons why I might be getting a different result to the original strategy video. But what we'll do now is jump in and write the code, and then I can add some diagnostics to it. So now to writing the code for this particular strategy. I'm in the MT5 editor and I've already created the outline of the code. All I've done is put in here comments. There's a reference here to the original strategy and then to the two follow-up videos that he made, one where it tested 100 times and the other where it was tested 200 times. And on this tested 100 times, I've also just made that note, Euro USD M5, because that's what I compare to. I think he used a different time frame for the 200 times test. Some of the standard functions that I'm going to include: the is new bar, a safe custom indicator, and points to double, and I've got these references here to my earlier videos. And all of these links I'll include in the description to this video as well. And then a brief summary of the strategy. So after a change of direction in the HA candles, the price must be above or below the EMA for a buy sell. I forgot to indicate here. So we buy on the upper HA candles and sell on the down candles. The price must be above for a buy or below for a sell. No tail on the candle, so that means no tail below for a buy and no tail above for the sell. The PSAR has to be below for a buy or above for a sell. Put the stop loss below or above the PSAR depending which direction you're going, and the take profit is a multiple of the stop loss. This is my brief summary of notes inside the code here. Definitely see this video and this one if you want a more detailed explanation of the strategy. And then just the usual copyright, link, version description, and I've included in the description this. And then my three main functions: on init, on dinit, and on tick. Before anything else, I'm going to include this trade/trade.mqh because I'm going to be using the trade class and an object of type trade to perform the trading, and that will also give me the position info which I need. Now the Heikin Ashi is not an inbuilt indicator, so I need to include a custom indicator for that. And as I've said in videos before, I like to include the indicator not from its original location, but I like to create a folder inside where I've put this expert advisor and put the indicator in there. That way I know that it's the same indicator, it doesn't change, because it'll always be the one that's associated with this expert advisor. If you want to know more about this, that is the safe custom indicator. And so now I've created the indicators folder, and I've just copied this heikinashi.ex5 from the examples, indicators examples that's supplied with MetaTrader. That is Heikin ex5. Then I need some inputs. So the moving average is an exponential moving average on close. So the only input I'm adding here is the period, default of 200. And the inputs for the SAR, there's the step and the max, and these are just the default values, but I've left inputs for them. There is no input for Heikin-Ashi, so I won't worry about that. But then I have the profit loss ratio at 2.5, so the take profit will be 2.5 times the stop loss. And then this stop loss gap in points is the distance away from the PSAR value where I'll set the initial stop loss, and I've just set that at 5 points. And then some standard values, the volume for each trade, magic number, and a comment. And I'm defaulting the volume here to 0.1. And now I'm using indicators, so each indicator will have a handle. I've just got an MA, a SAR, and an HA handle. And then on each iteration, I'm going to get the values of those indicators. I only need one value from each, so I've just got simple variables here. Indicator values, the HA value, the MA value, and the SAR value. And note that the HA and the SAR, because they're price related, are doubles. But for the HA value, I'm using the MQL rate structure because that will return the high, low, open, and close. And then this calculated globals, remember the stop loss I've input as points, and I like to convert those one time to an actual double value. So I've got a global variable for that. To handle the switch of direction, I'm actually holding two global variables, current direction and prev direction, and you'll see how they're used when I get to the code for that. And then I already have the include for the trade class, so these are my two variables, ctrade trade and cposition info position info. In the onInit function, the initialization is pretty simple. There's an init indicators function. I'll write that in a moment. I set the expert magic number on the trade object, setting that to the input magic. I'm initializing the current and prev direction to -1, which will help me to know that I'm at the beginning of the code and that I need to set them an initial time. And then this is where I'm converting that stop loss gap points using the points to double function, which is also mentioned in the comments, and putting that in the stop loss gap. Now one more thing I want to do, because I'm using Heikin-Ashi candles, I'm going to hide the standard candles from the chart. So some chart set integer statements here, the grid, bear, bull, line, down and up, all set to colon none, and the grid to false. And then just return init succeeded. Let's write the init indicators function before we go any further. And there's not much special in this. Release handles, I use this in case the expert has been restarted. I'm going to release the handles to the indicators that are already there. That's another function that I'll have to write in a moment. And then I'm just getting up handles for the moving average SAR and the Heikin-Ashi, IMA, ISAR. These are standard inputs with the symbol period, and the inputs for the moving average, inputs for the SAR, and for the iCustom symbol, period, and just HA indicator, which came from the defines above, which is simply the location of this Heikin-Ashi indicator, custom indicator. There are no inputs to Heikin-Ashi, so that's all I need there. Release handles is also very simple, just calling indicator release on each of those three handles. And I just put these into separate functions, indicators and handles, rather than embed them in the main code, because I like to keep the main code tight and clean. And now, good practice, I'm also releasing handles here on dinit, and then to onTick, where the main work happens. Firstly, new bar equals is new bar, and this is one of the functions that I have as a standard, so the link to that will be in the description. And if it's not a new bar, return, because I'm only trading once on each bar. And then refresh indicators. This will return the values in those MA values, SAR value, so on. And I only need to get those on every new bar, so I'll call that, and I'll write that function a little later. Now I also only want to have one position open at a time. For this test, I'm just testing if position count is greater than 0. So it's just if position count is greater than 0, then I'll just return. Now the next part of the strategy, check that the HA candle direction has flipped. So if we've had a trade open and that trade's closed because it's take profit or stop loss, but the HA candles are all still in the same direction, that doesn't constitute a flip as far as I understand from the strategy. So I'm waiting until it changes direction, then I'm going to set a flag that says I'm able to trade. So first I want to get the direction, which is just close is greater than open, then it's a buy, and if close is not greater than open, then it's a sell. That's the direction. Now if the previous direction is less than 0, that means I'm coming in for the first time. So I'm just saying previous direction is equal to the direction. That just initializes it. And then this is where I'll detect an actual flip. So if the previous direction is not equal to the current direction, then I must have had a flip. So I can simply set current direction equal to the current direction. And then in all cases, I'll just assign previous direction equals direction. And then I can get down to some actual trading. So if the current direction is order type buy, then I'm looking for a long setup. And I've put all of these conditions into separate statements, but if you wanted to, you could condense them into a single line. I just find this easier to read, and I thought it would be easier to show in the demonstration. So the first condition, if the close is less than the moving average value. So remember, we're saying the price must be above the moving average for a buy and below for a sell. So if it's less than the moving average value, I'll just return. If the close is less than or equal to the open, then it means the candle's going in the wrong direction. So I must have an up candle. If the low is less than the open, then that means that there is a tail on this particular candle, and the strategy says no tail, so I just return there. If the SAR value is greater than the open, then the SAR is on the wrong side of the candle, and again I return there. After that, it's just a question of open position for an order type buy. The SAR value minus the stop loss gap. So that stop loss gap I've got at 5 points. So whatever the SAR value is, I'm going to set the stop loss 5 points below that for a buy trade. And this open position is also a function I'll have to write in a moment. And then I set current direction to -1, which is basically a reset, and I'll have to wait now until at least the next time it changes direction before I can execute any trades. And then return, because obviously if I'm in buying mode, I can't be in selling mode as well. And then the sell conditions are just the opposite. The direction is order type sell. The close must be less than the moving average. If the close is greater than or equal to the open, then the candles go in the wrong direction. If the high is above the open, then I have a tail above the candle. And if the SAR is less than the open, then the SAR is on the wrong side and I can return. And if I get through all of that, then I just order type sell, and in this case it's SAR value plus the stop loss gap, and again reset the current direction. So now let's write these couple of functions that I've skipped over. There is the refresh indicators. So refresh indicators, index equals 1. I just like to put that into a variable because I'm looking at candle number 1, because remember I'm trading here at the beginning of a new candle. And I do that because you never really know when you're at the end of a candle. There's no indicator to say this is the last tick that you're going to get. So I'm trading at the beginning of a candle. I'm looking at candle number 1. Just get the MA value, which is just get indicator value, another function that I'll write in just a moment. For the MA handle, the SAR handle, this is the buffer number. There is only one buffer for the moving average and the SAR, and the index, which is the candle number that I want the value for. For the HA values, remember this is a structure, the HA value of type MQL rates, so it has an open, high, low and close, and they correspond to buffer numbers 0, 1, 2 and 3 of the Heikin-Ashi. So same functions here, but calling it with different buffer numbers. So while I'm here, the get indicator value gets a handle, a buffer number and an index. I declare an array of values, double, copy buffer, handle, buffer number, beginning at index, and I only want one value, and that goes into values, and then I just return that value 0. So the next missing function is this open position. So I've just put the open position below the on tick function. It takes the type and the stop loss price, MQL tick tick and symbol info tick, and I'm using those functions to get the bid and ask price, which will both be inside this tick structure. The entry price, double price. If this is an order type buy, then I'll get the ask price from the tick, and if it's an order type sell, then I must be opening at the bid price. The take profit price then is another function that I have to write, get take profit price, passing in the price and the stop loss price. Volume is just the input volume, and then I call trade.position open, symbol, type, volume, price, stop loss price, take profit price, and comment. And that completes the open position, except for this get take profit price. And get take profit price, I got the entry price and the stop loss price. So the stop loss, and this is the stop loss delta, is the entry price minus stop loss price. Now this is the same regardless of whether it's a buy or a sell. If it's a sell or if it's a buy, then entry price minus stop loss price is going to be a positive number. But if it's a sell, then the entry price minus stop loss price is going to be a negative number. And because I get that difference, everything just works after that without knowing the type of the trade. The take profit delta then is the stop loss delta multiplied by the profit loss ratio. And then the take profit price is the entry price plus that take profit delta. Now remember, if this happens to be a negative number because we're selling, then this will also be a negative number. And that means entry price plus take profit will wind up in a number that is lower than the entry price, which is correct for a sell trade. I normalize that, take profit price, normalize double, take profit price digits, and then just return that take profit price. And then I think that will be everything. See if that compiles. Position count, just put it down here behind these two utility functions. So just initializing count, I'm looping through all positions. Select by index using the position info class for I. Now if that returns a false, it means it didn't select that particular position. Could be any number of reasons for that, but if that doesn't happen, then this continue will just skip over the rest of the code here. Then I also check the symbol is equal to the symbol and the magic number is equal to the input magic. And if all of those pass, I'm just count plus plus and then return count. So that's position count function. And that's all compiled, and you can see it's included the resource, the Ikenashi EX5. So I'm in the code here and I'm going to add some diagnostics, and the diagnostic I'll add, it'll be fairly simple. In TradingView, there is that rectangle that TradePro uses that shows the opening position for a trade, shows the stop loss level and the take profit level, and extends for the life of the trade. I don't have that available in MetaTrader, so I'm going to simulate it. So first I'm going to call this function draw progress, and I'm going to do it here if position count is greater than 0. So that means I've got a trade open. So while there's a trade open, I'm going to draw a box that begins at the start of that trade and extends for as long as the trade is still open. So let's go down to that draw progress function. I'll write that. So draw progress. And again, I'm only writing this for the strategy tester. So I'm assuming that there are no other trades open in the system while I'm running the strategy test. So this position info.select by index 0 will get me the one and only position that's open. If you're running this in real life, then this is going to give you a strange result, because that could be a position from manual trading or from another symbol or from a different expert altogether. So you could modify that if you wanted to use this in live trading, but you'd have to include these types of conditions as well. So I've got the position that's open, the start time from that position. I'm making up a name for the rectangles by using the time to string for the start time. And I'm calling a second draw progress function that takes more arguments, where I'm passing in the name plus L, that's the loss box for the stop loss box, and name plus P, this is the take profit box. The start time, the opening price. In the case of the loss box, it will extend to the stop loss, and the profit box will extend to the take profit, and then just the colors. The detailed draw progress. First I'm deleting the object. It's easier to just delete it and make a new one each time than to look for the object and then update it. So chart number 0, which is the current chart, that name I'm deleting. I'm creating it again, name, it's a rectangle, it's on subchart 0, it's the main chart, from the start time and the open price until the current time and the close price, whatever the close price and the open price are that are supplied to the function. And then I'm just saying it has no fill, it's a background object, and I'm setting the color. So with that in place, I should get a box that will begin when a trade is opened and will extend until the trade's closed. Now I can run this same test again in visual mode, and then I'll see where those boxes have been drawn on the chart. I won't look at every trade, I just want to basically see if I'm doing the right things. So I've got a trade here. I can see that the candle is a down candle, it's below the PSAR, it's below the moving average, which is up here, and so there's an entry point, and if I just use the crosshairs, it's going to be a little bit approximate, but looks like 53 points to the stop loss, and 139 points to the take profit. So the ratio is correct. It's in the right direction. This one actually made a profit. The next one, I'll just test that as well. I can see the conditions are all met. Price is below the SAR, still below the moving average. So it's taken a short trade. Ratio 60, 64, 151. That's accurate enough for my crosshair drawing. So I'm getting the right ratio. It's meeting all the conditions. Let me just scroll forward until the price crosses that moving average, and I'll see if I can find a long trade. So I have a long trade here. Might just have to shrink that a little. So I've got an up candle. Has no wick. It's above the PSAR. It's above the moving average. All the conditions are correct. It's unfortunate it went into a downtrend immediately after, but that's 167 points to 421. That's about the 2.5 ratio. And this one also, you can see the price fell eventually. So I think I'm doing the right things. And just looking at this one, I can see a potential, if you want to modify the code to try it out, that I've had a trade open, which means I picked up the switch of direction here while that trade was still open, and then I opened this trade immediately after that closed. Maybe I should look for the switch after the trade closes, and that means I wouldn't have picked this one up, although I probably would have picked up this next one here, which would have been a slightly lower loss because it's beginning at a lower price. Anyway, that's just a potential modification. But I'm satisfied that I'm entering the trades at the right place. The stop loss is just below the PSAR here, and the ratios are correct. So it's doing all the right things. But I still have a result that is far worse than I'm led to believe by the description of the strategy. So on a little further investigation, you can see in the screenshot that this strategy test was approximately from the 13th of July 2020, and I'm looking at a completely different time period. So perhaps market conditions have changed. So I've now reset my time period from the 13th of July 2020 until the end of that year, 27th of December 2020. And that result doesn't look quite as bad, but it still represents an overall loss. I can see quite a long trend of bumps, but it appears to be in a general downward direction. So the next thing I noticed, I ran this for approximately 6 months for 336 trades. Now TradePro ran this for 100 trades, which sounds like a lot, but obviously it's nothing like the number I'm getting from a 6-month test. So let's just change that again. In MetaTrader, I can't set number of trades for the test. I can only set a time frame. So I'm going to adjust this a couple of times to see how close I can get to that 100. So I have adjusted it now, and I'm going from the 13th of July to the 16th of August, so just a month. And conveniently, that's come out at exactly 100 trades. And if I look at the graph now, there is a profit. But if you remember from the graph I had just a moment ago, where I ran this to the end of the year, it had a bump near the beginning of the test. And this is just putting a slice through the middle of that bump. In fact, if I cut back here a little further, maybe take it to only 90 trades, or maybe it's 80, then I make even more profit. So I think that's just a coincidence that the original 100 trades test was at a time where this just happened to make a profit, where all my tests over a longer period are showing a loss. I'll just run one more test. Since I've got all the data here, I'll go from the 13th of July 2020 and I'll go to 1st of January 25. Well, if you get this strategy at the right time, so the original TradePro test would have been around here somewhere. You could also have come in here and a significant profit up to there. From here to there, big spike just here, upward trend there. So there are little sections where we get upward trends, but the overall, beginning to end, is a loss. So my first instinct is to say that this was simply a lucky period chosen to run the initial test. But let's look at some other causes of potential differences here. Now the first difference that I have to mention, obviously, is different prices. If the TradePro test had a different set of prices from a different broker, then I would expect different results. I haven't checked to see if that's the case. I'm not going to. I just think I need to mention that here. The next is the difference between close and open. I've mentioned earlier in the video that when I open these trades, I wait for the beginning of the next candle because that's the only way I know that the candle before has closed. When TradePro is doing these tests, he's actually beginning by purchasing at the close of the candle. And because I don't know that, I'm purchasing at the open, and that means there may be a slight price difference between close and open. I don't think it's a big difference, but it's worth mentioning. The next is a big difference, and that is bid versus ask. TradePro is using a visual inspection of the charts, and he's starting from a price and going to a price. But charts historically show the bid price only. They don't show the ask price on the candles. That means that when a buy trade is entered, beginning at the bid price is wrong because the buy trades are opened at the ask price. It means that the gap to the stop loss, which is from the entry price to just below the PSAR, is calculated from bid to just below the PSAR instead of ask to below the PSAR. So for a buy trade, the stop loss would be bigger, and that means that when you calculate the 2.5 times that, you'll get a bigger take profit on a buy trade because of that spread difference. It also means that because buy trades are closed at the bid, you're already closer to the stop loss than to the take profit. And all those things are true in reverse of a short trade. So simply taking the bid as being the entry and the exit price for all trade types is going to lead to inaccuracies in the testing. And that, I think, is a direct consequence of doing this test visually on a chart. And the final thing here, I believe, is an error in the testing process, and that's the Heikin-Ashi chart prices. So looking at this, this is the first trade that TradePro takes, and it is on the 13th of July 20 at 13.10. You can see he's entering at the close of the candle there, and I've already explained the difference between open and close, but he's opening at the close of the Heikin-Ashi candle, and that's not where the actual market price is. Heikin-Ashi close prices are a calculated price, and you can't actually enter a trade there. You can only enter a trade at the true market price. If I bring up, this is my test for the same period, and because I have to run tests from the beginning of a business day, you can see I've got one trade already, and the trade I'm looking at is in the middle of the chart. So it's that tall trade in the middle there, and I'm entering at a price that is a bit above the Heikin-Ashi candle. I'm also entering on the candle after. So remember, I'm entering at the open price of this candle, where TradePro is entering at the close price of the candle before, but both of those are outside the body of the Heikin-Ashi candle. Well, my entry price is outside the Heikin-Ashi body for both of those candles, simply because I'm entering at the market price. And that's a big difference in price. It also means I'm going to be closing at market prices, nothing to do with the Heikin-Ashi candle. So while Heikin-Ashi might be a good way of looking at smoothed market price movements, you can't actually trade the Heikin-Ashi prices. Let me put them side by side. So you can see that I have picked up the same, I've got a scale difference, so mine looks a little taller, but you can see the pattern's the same. They're on the same day. My trade is actually at 16.10, or just after the 16.10 candle, where TradePro has the 13.10 candle, but I think that he's just using a different time zone. I'm using the broker's time zone, which aligns to midnight as 5 p.m. New York time. So that's just a slight difference, but otherwise these are the same entry points, and mine is higher. And if you just take a look at the screen here, there's the trade that I entered. Here is the 13.10 candle, which on my chart shows as 16.10. My entry price is here, which I've opened at the beginning of the following candle. And if I just hover over this candle that was actually the trigger, and then if I zoom in on the data window, you can see that the close price on that candle was 1.13371, but the Heikin-Ashi close was 1.13344. So there is a difference, not a huge difference in this case, but it's a difference enough to make a difference to the test results. And so that's my review of this particular strategy. I think that there might be things you can do with it. If you've got the code, then feel free to modify that. Feel free to use different parameters and settings. You might be able to make something better of it. And as we did see, there are times where it performs better than others. If you want to try to identify those times and turn this on and off, then you might be more successful with it. But otherwise, I would say this is not a successful strategy as a just set and forget long term. If this has been useful to you, then please click the like button, and if you want to see more of these videos, click subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video is released. Thank you for watching.